New post by Foreign Policy magazine, one that significantly represents the interests of imperialist foreign policy. That's kind of the whole point. They're saying that now that the real crimes of Syria and the Assad government have been exposed, a peace deal is now impossible. They call Bashar al-Assad the defiant president of Syria that may never go on trial as long as his patrons in Russia don't wish to replace him. So you're telling me we've now got all these people who have proof, and by proof we mean people, a completely anonymous people, making a blanket accusation with no evidence that there's all these such and such war crimes going on. But now that we know about them, we cannot do a peace negotiation with Assad. So let me get this straight. So this is what happens once essentially ISIS and the moderate head choppers get defeated in Syria. They don't have anything anymore. Now that it's clear that they've lost, the imperialists have already lost with their proxy forces, now they don't want a peace agreement. As long as their forces were still there and still able to do damage, they were still able to try to force a peace agreement with Assad, essentially forcing him out of the government that he was duly elected into. But now that that option is now no longer there, all they say now peace agreements are impossible, and all of a sudden they've come out with new evidence of all these wrongdoings that have been done. And of course, you have to link it to Russia. Russia. And of course, Assad's a puppet of Russia. Which you might be able to claim that, but you'd be wrong. As opposed to the way things are aiming to be run, and that is Syria being a puppet of the United States. But, you know, you always got to take that opportunity to bash Russia, even though they're kind of on the right side of history on this thing. But here's something that's very interesting. They're claiming that millions of refugees Syrian refugees in Germany have lived under the fear that they may be forced to return to their home countries. That's a complete lie. No, that's an outright, straight-up lie. We've actually seen in the past that once significant gains were made by the Syrian Arab army, that a lot of Syrians were choosing to go back home. They voluntarily went because the places that they lived were no longer under the occupation of ISIS and other U.S. proxy forces. So them saying millions of refugees in Germany are scared of going home? That's an outright lie. That's a blatant outright lie. They're not scared at all. They found a couple of puppets who will say things anonymously so that way they can't be held accountable for what they say, or they cannot be fact-checked for what they say to claim that millions of people are scared to go back. If that was true, then wouldn't they have been leaving before the war? I mean, we're trying to apply logic to this story here, which kind of makes it fall apart. You remember how there was all these accusations of chemical weapons and all these stories all fell apart? Chemical weapon attacks, I should say. And they all fell apart under scrutiny by the actual investigators from the OPCW. And then a former head of the OPCW came forward saying that essentially the governing body, the body was being manipulated by imperialist interests. He didn't say that. He said by foreign actors or state actors. But that's essentially what it is that he was saying. And then 4 of the actual investigators come forward and say that their findings were being twisted to serve a political purpose. 4 of them. On separate occasions. So I think it's pretty clear here what Foreign Policy magazine is trying to say. And by proxy, what the U.S. imperialist side, that includes Germany, the NATO allies in general, what they're really saying is that now that they can't force Assad into some kind of peace deal, because why would Assad agree to one? You invaded his country. You invaded their country. And now that they can't do that, oh, now it's the complete and total condemnation of Assad, and we simply cannot do any negotiations with this evil tyrant anymore. The tyrant here has always been the United States and its junior partners in imperialism. Every single one of these, for the lack of a better term, political sips, Canada, the UK, Germany, Australia, essentially the usual suspects. These countries have supported the most brutal and violent dictatorships that have ever existed in the world. They are responsible for the destruction of Syria using proxy forces to begin with and their moderate head choppers. So they're the ones saying that there can no longer be any kind of negotiations with the Assad government because now Assad's gone too far. I say the imperialist governments have gone too far. And there was never any moral ground whatsoever to engage in peace negotiations with them to begin with, because this whole thing has been an imperialist plot. And quite frankly, I'm offended. It actually is hard to offend me, but this legitimately pisses me off and legitimately offends me that these people who are known for absolute liars are saying that this is the red line that's gone too far after repeatedly lying about things regarding the war in Syria to begin with. Who are they to demand anything? Who are they to take any kind of moral high ground? But part and parcel for imperialism.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.